Suffering, the door we avoid. Suffering, a word we instinctively recoil from. Yet, no matter how fast we run, how far we travel, or how much we numb ourselves, suffering finds us. The Stoics believed it was not suffering itself that destroys us, but our interpretation of it. To suffer is not a flaw in the human design. It is, in many ways, the essence of it. Seneca wrote, "Difficulties strengthen the mind as labor does the body." But this view isn't unique to the Stoics. The Buddha said, "Pain is inevitable, but suffering is optional." The difference? One is the raw sensation of life. The other, yes, our resistance to it. Why does suffering exist at all? Is it merely a cruel byproduct of existence, or is it a coded message, a teacher in disguise? Modern psychology suggests that suffering, especially in the form of trauma or loss, can lead to what is called post-traumatic growth. Researchers like Richard Tedeschi have shown that, under certain conditions, adversity doesn't just break us. It rebuilds us, stronger and deeper than before. Spiritual traditions across the world, from Christianity's crucifixion to Sufi whirling, from Hindu karmic purification to shamanic initiation, frame pain not as punishment, but as a rite of passage. So what if your suffering is not senseless? What if it contains a message, a doorway, and a transformation? This is not a promise that pain will disappear, but a proposal that we change how we listen to it. Let us walk through the fire not to escape it, but to understand what it's trying to burn away. The Stoic embrace of adversity. To the Stoics, suffering was not something to be feared. It was something to be embraced. Epictetus, a slave-turned-philosopher, understood suffering intimately. It's not what happens to you, but how you react to it that matters. This was his mantra and the backbone of Stoic resilience. They believed that life is filled with events outside our control: illness, loss, betrayal, death. But what remains within our power, our only true power, is how we choose to perceive and respond. To suffer well for the Stoics was to cultivate virtue, courage, discipline, wisdom, and justice. Suffering wasn't the enemy, it was the gymnasium of the soul. Marcus Aurelius, Emperor of Rome, journaled nightly about his grief, doubts, and physical ailments. Yet his meditations are infused with calm acceptance. The impediment to action advances action. What stands in the way becomes the way. This is not poetic abstraction. It is a psychological principle validated centuries later by modern therapy: cognitive reappraisal. Instead of resisting pain, Stoicism teaches us to lean into it, not masochistically, but mindfully. They call this amor fati, the love of one's fate. Even when life is cruel, we are not victims unless we surrender the meaning of the moment. To practice Stoicism is not to avoid pain, but to alchemize it. You look your suffering in the eye and say, "You may shape me, but you will not shatter me." And from that crucible, something greater is forged. Not just survival, but strength. Not just endurance, but enlightenment. The spiritual alchemy of suffering. Across cultures and millennia, suffering has never been seen as meaningless. In fact, it is often the very language of spiritual evolution. In Hinduism, suffering is tied to karma and dharma, both consequences and cosmic assignments. Pain can be the fruit of past actions, yes, but also a challenge meant to awaken deeper truths. The Bhagavad Gita frames suffering not as failure, but as the battlefield where the soul remembers its divine nature. In Christianity, suffering reaches its theological peak in the crucifixion. Jesus' agony is not merely a story of pain, it is a sacred act, a redemptive suffering. "Take up your cross," he said. The cross symbolizes not just external trials, but the inner burdens we must carry, confront, and ultimately transcend. In Buddhism, the first noble truth is direct. Life is dukkha, suffering, unsatisfactoriness. But the path of liberation isn't to deny suffering. It is to deeply understand it. The Buddha taught that clinging, whether to pleasure, identity, or illusion, creates our suffering. Letting go, he said, is the way to peace. Even indigenous traditions like the vision quests of Native Americans or the ayahuasca rituals of Amazonian tribes utilize suffering as a purifier, a sacred fire to burn away ego, fear, and falsehood. Pain becomes ceremony, initiation, rebirth. Across all these systems, suffering is seen not as a detour, but as the very path to awakening. What if the soul chooses to suffer, not out of masochism, but as a form of remembering? What if your pain is not a curse, but a sacred calling? The psychology of pain, a modern mirror. Modern psychology, once focused only on eliminating pain, has begun to reconsider. What if pain isn't a problem, but a signal, a form of information? Carl Jung believed that the shadow, the unconscious part of ourselves we repress, is revealed through discomfort. Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate. In this framework, suffering is the psyche demanding integration. Richard Tedeschi and Lawrence Calhoun coined the term post-traumatic growth, identifying 5 domains where people often flourish after adversity: greater appreciation for life, enhanced personal strength, better relationships, new possibilities, spiritual development. This isn't blind optimism, it's supported by decades of clinical research. It shows that suffering, when met with reflection and support, can expand us. There's also the somatic side. Neuroscientific studies reveal how trauma is stored in the body. Tight shoulders, gut tension, chronic fatigue. Bessel van der Kolk's The Body Keeps the Score explains that healing requires not just talking, but feeling, breathing, releasing. Modern therapies like EMDR, internal family systems, and somatic experiencing don't suppress suffering. They guide us to listen to it. In short, suffering isn't just psychological noise, it's a coded message. A whisper from your body, your childhood, your soul. The key is not to silence it, but to translate it. Transmuting pain into purpose. The great transformation begins when we stop asking, "Why me?" and start asking, "What now?" Every story of greatness is seated in suffering. From Mandela's prison cell to Maya Angelou's abuse to the countless anonymous people who survive, heal, and rise, the path is the same. From victim to vessel. Viktor Frankl, Holocaust survivor and psychiatrist, wrote in Man's Search for Meaning, "When we are no longer able to change a situation, we are challenged to change ourselves." His logotherapy approach is built on the premise that human beings can endure almost any how if they have a why. Pain, then, is not the opposite of purpose. It is its midwife. Think of the Japanese art of kintsugi, where broken pottery is mended with gold. The cracks are not hidden, they are celebrated. The wound becomes the art. The pain becomes the path. To transmute suffering is to no longer see it as an interruption of life, but as life itself unfolding. Your heartbreak, your loss, your depression, these are not detours, they are revelations. And this is where meaning emerges. Not always in answers, but in presence. Not in control, but in connection. To your breath, your truth, your shared humanity, the most powerful people are not those who have never suffered. They are those who have befriended their suffering, who have sat in the ashes and found within them a spark. You are not broken, you are being reshaped. From wound to wisdom, there comes a moment after the tears, after the rage, after the silence, when something shifts. Not outside of you, but within. The pain is still there, the memory still echoes. But it no longer owns you, it no longer defines you. This is not forgetting, it is integration. It is the quiet wisdom that suffering has given you, not through escape, but through intimacy. In Japanese, there's a word, arigato. It means thank you. Its root, arigatai, implies something rare, difficult, and precious. A kind of gratitude for what is hard. A sacred appreciation for the struggle. Imagine saying thank you, not just for the joy, but for the heartbreak. Not just for the light, but for the darkness that taught you how to see. The Sufi mystic Rumi wrote, "The wound is the place where the light enters you." It's not just poetic, it's spiritual truth. Your suffering is not a failure of life. It is the fire through which your soul is being forged, not into perfection, but into wholeness. In the end, the question is not, how do I avoid pain? But what kind of person am I becoming because of it? You were not meant to live a life free of suffering. You were meant to live through it, learn from it, and love deeper because of it. So if you're hurting right now, know this. Your pain is real, but so is your power. Your scars may remain, but so will your strength. And one day, someone will find light in your story because you were brave enough to walk through the fire and come out golden. So now, as the final words fade and the silence returns, ask yourself, what has your suffering taught you that comfort never could? Pain carves us open, but only so that more light can enter. It breaks the illusion of control. It shatters the ego. And in that shattering, something ancient, something eternal begins to whisper, you were never meant to be untouched. You were meant to be transformed. From the Stoics to the mystics, from science to spirit, the message echoes through time. Do not run from your suffering. Lean in, learn, transcend. Because when you stop seeing pain as the enemy, you start seeing it as a teacher, a guide, a mirror showing you who you are and who you are still becoming. So suffer, yes, but suffer wisely. Let your wounds become your wisdom. Let your struggle become your strength. Let your story become someone else's survival. And as you walk forward from here, remember, you are not broken. You are breaking open. If this message stirred something deep within you, don't let it end here. Like this video, share it with someone you love, and subscribe to join this growing community of seekers, thinkers, and soul travelers. Until next time, walk gently, suffer wisely, live deeply.